Hello, and welcome to Champions of Education. I'm your host and Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Kenneth Hamilton. Today's episode is very special to us because it concerns one of our own. Monroe Township High School senior Mickey Nichols was seriously injured while participating in the varsity ice hockey game against Vernon High School on January 4th. Joining us today are Mikey's parents, Stephen and Christine Nichols, to give us an update on how Mikey is doing. Mr. and Mrs. Nichols, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning, Dr. Hamilton. Thank you for having us.
So, take me back to January 4th. I know, Mr. Nichols, you were at the game. Tell me what happened. Describe what happened that day.
Well, in the process of playing the game, physical contact checking is part of the game. Michael was checked into the boards. He went down on the ice, and like he has done many times in his hockey career, and gotten up every other time from it. But he didn't seem to get up as quick as he generally did this time. So the trainer and the coach, Coach Minter, ran onto the ice. I ran around the glass and take a look, and he kind of mouthed to me that he couldn't feel anything. I felt at that time I had to get onto the ice to see what was going on. Mm-hmm. I did, and when I got out there, he said to me, "Dad, I can't feel anything." He seemed very calm. He wasn't crying. He didn't seem like he was in any kind of pain, but he said he couldn't feel anything. He mentioned to me that, "Dad, you know, I was the best player on the ice tonight." And being Dad, of course, I said, "You was, son." I said, "Don't worry, everything will be fine." From there, the EMS was there within minutes, and they started to stabilize his neck, and they told me that they were going to be airlifting him to the nearest Trauma 1 center, which was Morristown Memorial Hospital, who, by the way, did a fantastic job in caring for our son. And I got my directions to how to get there and called Christine and told her, "I don't want to alarm you, but I think you need to make your way up here." Chris was at the JV game with our youngest son earlier that evening, so that's why we weren't both there. Mm-hmm. But it was a pretty scary experience, to be honest with you.
I know when I got the call that I got was we have a student who was injured and he's being airlifted to a nearby hospital, and I, of course, immediately began to be concerned. What was it like for you when you got that call?
Oh, it was, I was in the middle of ShopRite doing food shopping, and when I got the call, I just like dropped everything, and it was a panic. I think it was more of a panic of not knowing, because Steve didn't know, and then also was also a panic that it was so far away. Yeah. Okay, I originally come from New York, so when they said Morristown, I was like, where? What? You know, I called one of our neighbors and asked them to take me up, Mr. Robert Lombard, which he did. Him and his wife, they took me to the hospital, because I don't think I would have been able to find it, you know, in the panic. And I have to say that once we got there, and Mikey was talking like Mikey, okay? He was talking and telling me not to worry. And the doctors there in the trauma center, the surgeons, they were all phenomenal. You know, they let you know everything that was going on every step of the way. But Mike's like, "Ma, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right." You know, and we know today that it's not all right, but we're on our next step. So that's the good thing.
Right. So let's talk about that. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how is Mikey doing now. I know I've been up there a couple of times, and you're right, the staff there has been extraordinary. Each time that I've been there, they have been very diligent with caring for Mikey during my visits. How's he doing now?
Well, every day he improves a little bit. There have been some setbacks along the way, but there are many more steps forward than there are backwards, which is really important. Psychologically, Mikey is doing reasonably well most of the time. In the early stages of this, you know, that first night that Christine talked about, and the next morning before he went to the surgery, he told me that, "Dad, that ice I can't get up from, I'm going back to the stand up on." And you know, I said, "Son, I'm sure you will." And it was really uplifting to see the positive that was coming out of him. He's now out of the ICU unit, which was really a tough time, because he was in the ICU unit because he was in serious critical condition. Fortunately, now he's been moved on to the next phase, which is rehab. And here he's going to focus on trying to get as much return use of his limbs as possible. He has now been moved from a feeding tube to a liquid diet, which is awesome. Today's the first day. He is expecting ice cream for lunch. He was real happy about that when I left the hospital this morning. He's been drinking water since last night and juice, and he's really happy about that. And he's just a day or so away from actually being able to eat solid foods. Well, I shouldn't say solid foods, soft foods. And he's really looking forward to that. All in all, he's doing better every day, and that's all we can ask for right now is a little improvement. Little milestones are tremendous.
Yeah.
I know during one of my visits there, I was there while they were giving him his physical therapy. And when I think about where Eric LeGrand was at this stage of his injury, Mikey has actually a little further along than Eric
Yes, he
was
is.
at that point. How has the physical therapy been for Mikey thus far?
Well, I can honestly say that Michael looks forward to it. At 6 a.m. this morning, he told me, Dad, we're late for occupational therapy is the one he does at 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, no, Mike, we have time. He wanted to get dressed and wanted to go to it. It's challenging for him because there's pain involved as well. When you don't use your muscles, whether it be just a simple sprained ankle or a broken bone, when you have the cast removed, your muscles weaken. So the first part of the physical therapy is to get the strength in his muscles back.
Right.
And that's what he's doing right now. That can be painful at times, but he grits his teeth and he gets through it. He's in his third day of physical therapy today, and I got to say, I'm super proud of my son for the amount of effort he puts into getting it done each day.
Wow.
It's important that he does it.
Well, as tragic as the incident has been for us, it really has made Mikey this hometown hero in a sense. There has been such an outpouring, not just regionally, but even nationally. And I know he's gotten a lot of attention from some pretty noted players as well. Talk to me a little bit about Eric LeGrand. I know Eric, who was the Rutgers student who was injured, came to see Mikey. Talk to me about what that visit was like for Mikey.
Well, Steve wasn't there the day that he came. Eric came with his mom, Karen, and they're both wonderful people. And Eric is inspirational. First of all, when Eric wheels into the room, he lights up. The smile that he has on his face, it's phenomenal. I mean, it is so bright, and like you feel it. It just he radiates. And he was talking to Mikey, and he was letting Mikey know that, I know this is rough, and I know it's hard. And he was telling him, you're better than where I was. You're ahead of me, dude. And if I can do all this, you could do it. Mm-hmm. And he let him know that I'll be there for you. I'll help you. So I do see Mikey and Eric, being friends and
Absolutely.
and having a relationship for a while. Eric's mom already came to see Steve yesterday because we take turns,
Mm-hmm.
And Eric is so positive. Eric has a wonderful life, a positive life. Even after what happened, he knows that there's a purpose for him. Mm-hmm. And nothing's going to stop Eric. Nothing will stop him. I will not be surprised of what Eric does. Eric is still in therapy 3.5 years now, and he can move his shoulders. He almost looks like he's dancing on the, on the top part. And Eric believes that he will walk, and I believe that he will.
Wow.
Because that's what he brings to the table. He's phenomenal. I've never met anybody like him, and I probably never will meet anybody like him. And for him to help my son is a blessing.
Wow. How did Mikey respond to Eric's visit?
He couldn't talk at that time,
Mm-hmm.
but he smiled. He just kept smiling, and he would go like this. And Eric also gave him a signed autograph of his book. So like Mike, when I'm there, I read a little stuff to him about it, and he'll talk about it. But it seemed that when Eric did leave, and Eric stayed with Mike for like a good hour, mm-hmm. Mike was in a better spirit, and he was like, yeah, I could do it, which he's been saying, but you have the days where you feel like maybe you can't do it. So when Eric came in, it was right after he had a couple of those days. So he needed that. And it was great. It was great. And he'll be back to see him again.
So talk to me a little bit about the outpouring from the community. What has that been like, and how has this impacted your daily lives as well?
amazing. Amazing is an understatement.
Yeah, there's no word for it.
You can't even describe how vital it has been to us being able to get through this. As you can well imagine, this is an unbearable experience for us that's become somewhat bearable because of folks like yourself, Mr. Goodall, Mr. Minter, Mr. Donovan, his teammates, all the students of this school,
All the neighbors,
the
everyone.
neighbors, the people in the community. You know, every time when I get a little down, I look on his Facebook page or I read one of the cards and letters, which I'm going to spend a lot of time reading to Mike when we get the chance to do it. It just somehow it brightens your day, and it puts into perspective how, like you said, Michael has somehow become a celebrity. Mike's just a 17-year-old high school kid getting ready to go off to college, and all of a sudden this celebrity status became, and that's overwhelming in and of itself, especially the reason why it was caused, but the love and outpouring from our community. We are truly blessed by that, the people that are around us. It is unbelievable. It helps us get by immensely. I can't put enough words on it. I don't know if we'd have the strength to do it if we were all by ourselves. Do you think we would?
No, absolutely
I
not.
honestly
You know
don't
what?
think so.
In my neighborhood, I don't have to worry about my daughter being picked up for the bus or brought to the bus. I don't have to worry about anything, because every
Meals.
neighbor, even neighbors that I don't really know, I know now. Okay. I actually said I can't believe this, and somebody said to me, "This is Monroe. This is what we do." So I take that. This is Monroe. This is what we do.
What a great place to live.
Right.
A great place to live.
It shows why you live in a town, okay? Because during times like this, everybody's together and you're all one.
Right.
You know, you do whatever you can do, and that's why we are Monroe.
There's certainly strength in numbers, and the numbers are phenomenal.
And the prayers, I mean,
Yeah.
you can never get enough prayers.
One of the things that touched me the most when I came to see Mikey, and you shared with me about how the Avid kids came to his aid, and you were reading letters to him that the Avid kids.
That was very early on, yes.
Yeah, talk to me about that. I'm really interested in it, because one of the benefits, if you will, that you can't measure is how the Avid program bonds kids and creates those kinds of relationships. You can measure test scores and you can look at the number of kids who are going on to college, but you can't measure the connection that these kids make.
Right. That, you know, he has a lot of friends from the Avid that he started, that he didn't know until he started Avid, okay? Those friends will be his friends for the rest of his life. And if he wasn't in that Avid, that wouldn't have happened. He has a friend who is his best friend. She's a female, Sydney, and the relationship they have is like brother and sister, okay? They actually know what each other is thinking. You know, before this accident, they spoke every day. That relationship wouldn't have happened, but they were an Avid from 7th grade on. You know what I mean? And there were a lot of other kids in there that I didn't even know the kids were in these classes until after this happened. Like Mario, you know, they're such good friends, and the support from them, you know, is I got a bag of stuff like this big, and they wrote them letters, and it wasn't just, you know, Mikey, we heard about what happened, please feel better. It was very personal.
Right.
Oh, wow.
You know, I remember this time when I was a little down and you were there for me. You know, we've always been there for each other. That's what we do here. You know, they were more personal, not the regular.
Gotcha.
You know what
Regular
I mean?
classmates. They're beyond regular classmates.
Right.
Definitely. Those people have a special bond.
Right.
It really is amazing. And those cards, you remember early on, Chris, you know, those first few nights when we got those cards?
That's all we did was read those cards.
We would lay in, the hospital was good enough to get us a room across the street. And I guess it's an apartment complex.
Yeah,
they must use for residents
3 nights or something, yeah.
So we each had our twin beds, and we'd sit there, and I'd read one pile, and Chris would read the other pile. And
because you can't sleep.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It was so uplifting. It was so, tears came to our eyes. Some of the letters were so touching. It was amazing, amazing. We read a few to Mike. I can't wait for that opportunity when Mike has enough energy, because right now he stays up very full, when we can sit back and say, let's start reading all of these. We have a lot of work to do reading these letters.
Right now in my dining room, when you go in my dining room, I have a carton this high.
Wow.
And in that carton is every card that he's gotten, every letter that he's gotten, so that we don't want to misplace one of those.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're in there, so that and if it's time to bring it to the rehab, or when it's time for him to be home, I want him to have every card.
And the avid ones were in that special envelope.
Now, one of my visits, he was so tired, but he wanted to get through his physical therapy. What's his spirit like now?
Most of the time, it's good. Sometimes, as a matter of fact, last night was the first time he asked that question, why me? And, you know, I was a little taken back by that question, although I knew it was going to come. And I answered it, Mike, that's a good question, Mike. I asked that question too, but unfortunately, we're not going to get the answer. I said, you don't deserve this. You're a good kid, you're a good friend, you're a good son, you're a good big brother. I said, but I know one thing, that God did this for a purpose, and someday we're going to know what that purpose is. And that seemed to somehow get him through that. Maybe it was the thought of God somehow having control over it that mattered to him. But most of the time, he's upbeat. You know, the other day we were talking with the occupational therapist. We're going to have to remodel our home to make it, you know, accessible for him. And Michael said, I'm going to be walking.
Right.
And I said, yes, Michael, you will be walking, hopefully. But I said, you might not be walking when you're ready to come home, so we have to prepare just in case. And that's what they tell us to do, to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, which is what we should do in every aspect of life, of course.
Right.
And that's what we do. But generally speaking, his spirits are good. They really are good. And it helps, you know, once in a while we show him some of the Facebook stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and it does brighten his day, and you see the smile comes on his face. The few cards that we have read him from the avid people, it does brighten his day, you know. So those of you who've done those cards and letters, keep them coming, because they help. They really, really do.
Now, I know you've intentionally tried to keep visitation limited to a certain number of people, because he's tired and he needs his strength, and there's a lot of activity in his room. Who are some of the folks who've been out to visit Mikey?
Well, you yourself, as you mentioned, were out a couple of times. Mr. Goodall has been out. Other than that, it's pretty much been the immediate family and some of our dearest friends. As far as his younger teenage friends, there has just been two of them that have come to see him. One of them being Sydney, and another good friend of his, a former teammate on the hockey team, Jimmy Burns, has come to see him. Those are the only ones that he's asked for right now. We ask him daily, you know, are you ready for visitors? Are you ready for visitors? And he keeps on saying no. And I think part of the reason was he didn't want people to come there and pity him. He's not the type of kid that wants pity.
Right.
You know, now that he's in rehab, and now that he gets dressed, as opposed to being in a hospital gown, and the amount of tubes and IVs and things like that that are connected to him are maybe a fifth of what they were at that time.
Now, there's no IVs now.
Right. You're right. But he still is attached to monitors and things like that.
Very minimal. Compared to how ICU was.
He did mention this week that he wanted to see some of his teachers.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah,
So,
he wants to see Mr. Allen.
You know, Mr. Allen definitely is on the top of the list.
Mr. Allen is like, for Mike, even though he didn't know it, Mr. Allen mentored him. Okay.
No question.
No question about it. And now, when we ask him, who would you like to see, instead of him saying, you know,
my best friend,
he said, I want to see Mr. Allen.
Mr. Allen. And then he said Mr. Minton, Mr. Donovan, and Miss Grimaldi.
And Mrs. Grimaldi, who he hasn't had since 10th grade.
Wow.
But he's, you know, he has good relationships with them. And they've made an impact on his life for the positive. You know, and I told you in the hospital that Avid has done a wonderful thing. Mikey was a regular student, you know, 70, you know, whatever. I mean, the last year and the beginning of this year, he's an 85 student.
Wow.
And that's
great.
from Avid. you know?
No question.
So Abbott has brought to him a lot. So it's a great program, and I thank you as his mom for bringing it to him. And it's fantastic. I don't even know what else to say
Well,
about
that's really
it.
good to hear. You
No,
know,
it works. That program works.
It works.
It truly does.
You know, they may feel, oh, I got to give up an elective,
Right.
but in the long run, it works. It gives them so much more. They don't even know it. You know when they'll know it? When they're in college and they come back and they say, oh, you know what, Ma? I know I wanted to quit, but you made me stay in it, and thanks.
Right,
Thanks.
right.
Well, I think Mikey already started to know it because when he applied to 5 schools and got accepted to 4 of the 5, and got that first acceptance letter. Remember when he got that first acceptance letter? How happy he was.
Yeah.
That is great
And
news.
talking about college, he still wants to go to college. His thing is that he's still going to go. He's still going to Widener. That's where he wants to go.
Excellent.
That was his choice. They also, I don't know if you've seen, because he met with the hockey coach there. He was supposed to go with the team. They've Twitter, whatever it is, that
Something we're not familiar with.
Mikey, your jersey's waiting for you. And they sent a picture of the jersey with the number 23 on
wow.
it.
Excellent.
And we have, you know, that. And we showed him that.
And it brightened his day.
And it made a big thing. And we asked him, do you want us to send the paperwork? You still want to go there? Yes. Even if I don't get there in September, I'm still going there.
Excellent.
You know, and that's what it is at the end of the day, that he's going to go on with his life. However, you know.
Well, there's an incredible sense of camaraderie with with all of our teams, particularly the ice hockey team.
Yep.
I noticed in Mikey's room, he's got his jersey and all this paraphernalia to kind of remind him of how important that jersey and that team is. How does keeping that stuff in his face, on his radar, how does that help him? Do you think that encourages him to recover faster?
I absolutely think it encourages him because hockey was Michael's passion. I mean, we all have passions in life, and hockey was Michael's passion. Of course, he would love to play in the NHL, but he was a realist. He knew he wasn't going to the NHL, but he would, well, maybe not. Maybe but
he always thinks there was a chance.
He used to look so forward to practices. He used to look so forward to getting in the locker room with his teammates. He talks about how he loved the smell of hockey, and hockey is I got to tell you, Dr. Hamilton, that's a tough smell. But it seems like they love it because it brings them, you know, a sense of a bonding, and they're in that locker room, they're on the bus. So when we show him all of that stuff, it kind of gives him, say, I want to get back to those guys. I want to get back to my teammates. I want to get back to Coach Minter. Even though the hockey season is coming to a close as we speak, I know he's looking forward to getting back and being with his teammates because it was real important to him. And I got to say something about sports in general, especially high school sports. It teaches us so much about life. It teaches us the value of hard work. It teaches us how to fail and get up from the failure. There's so many lessons to be learned through sports, and hockey was a sport that Mikey was attracted to. It's so important to us. So when you do the budget next week, make sure they still have school sports.
That's good to know. I appreciate the plug.
It really is important to kids.
There are benefits going on all over the community to support Mikey. There's a comedy show coming up. There's a police versus staff basketball game coming up, sponsored by the
pasta dinner coming up.
Pasta dinner coming up. The community really has rallied around making sure that you, not just Mikey, but his family and his support network, that you guys are okay. How has that impacted you, just seeing all the hoopla around supporting the Nichols family?
You know, we have a group of friends that we didn't even know their first names until this happened, and now they're dear friends to us. You know, just the idea of people taking time out of their lives, and there's a couple of people, and I hope you don't mind if I mention a couple of names. Michelle, Sydney's mom, has been phenomenal. My friend Joe Isola, and his wife Pam, they've been phenomenal.
And Nancy Sheeta. Cindy Kennedy's mom.
Kennedy's mom, another good friend of his. I mean, these people have disrupted their lives immensely, to put these events together. We don't have to do anything. We
Right.
just have to know when they are and hopefully find a time to be able to show up at them. Like, it's amazing. I can't tell you how important it is to us. We wouldn't be able to be here today
Right.
if it wasn't for that, because we would be
Absolutely.
in some corner, you know, huddled and crying. But
Well, I can't thank you enough for being on the show and sharing with us. The community is engaged in constant prayer around Mikey
Absolutely.
and around your family, and I know prayer works.
It does.
And we'll continue to do so. I want to thank you so much again for being here.
Thank
and
you.
please let Mikey know that the community is behind him 100%. And if prayer by numbers carry any weight, Mikey will be just fine.
Thank you.
thank you so much for having
We
us.
thank everybody.
Well, again, I'd like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Nichols for taking the time to come to speak to us today. We ask that you continue to send your best wishes, your prayers, and your support to Mikey and his family. That concludes this episode of Champions of Education. Please tune in next time when we will feature an explanation of the Monroe Township Public School budget for the 2014-2015 school year. See you next time.